They're not getting rent holiday. And if they have a mortgage, they have mortgage to pay just as well. And they need to buy food, but there's no income. So what do you live off when the income disappears? It is what you had saved in the time that you're working. When I asked the question at one of my seminars, how many months could you afford to stay unemployed if you lost your job? The room went deathly silent. And I heard a few more people muttering, we couldn't afford to get laid off at all. And what they're basically saying when they say they can't afford to get laid off, it is because they haven't been saving anything at all. It's going all the way out. So I want to say to you that the creation of wealth is deliberate. It is strategic and it calls for focus. It calls for focus. I'm reminded of that person who said, live below your means. Live below your means. Preparing a budget is easy. Anybody can do it. But you know what's the hard part? Sticking to it. That's the hard part. Sticking to the budget. Your spending must be guided by your earning. So if your take-home pay is $500,000, please don't spend more than $500. In fact, spend less than $500. So it goes on to say then that your spending should be tempered by discipline. We spoke about the lessons that COVID-19 has taught us. Let's pause a while to talk about what are some of the financial lessons that we've learned from COVID. Anybody wants to lead off that conversation? What have you learned from COVID? Don't be shy.
Well, as you said, I have learned that you can't take anything for granted because on reflection, I mean, I would have said that my job was secure because it was providing a service for several students, but the University of the West Indies is actually closing down programs. So nobody's job is secure. So you can't imagine that you're safe. You certainly have to put something aside for the future. You can't take it for granted. I think that is it. You can't take anything for granted anymore.
Yes, that's so true.
For me,
yes.
For me, there are two main things that this pandemic has taught me. It's the importance of saving for a rainy day.
Yes, and the rainy day is fair.
Right. And then the second thing it has taught me is to the importance of diversifying your income.
When we do look at the budget, we're going to be looking exactly at that because you're going to be seeing different streams of income on it. So you're touching a bit of what you're going to go on, but continue speaking.
Right, no, those are the two main things that this pandemic has taught me.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
This is not budget related, but it has taught me to appreciate my job much more because, you know, at times, sometimes we complain about how difficult our jobs are. But in the face of COVID, when you see persons actually losing their jobs and not having a source of income to pay their bills, when you self-reflect, you realize that, well, even though my job might be difficult, I'm very happy that I'm in a job because I'm able to pay my bills and survive throughout COVID.
Yes, a group of our colleagues on campus were talking since COVID, and we said that, you know, we're sometimes not very grateful to the university, but we're grateful. Each month our salary check was lodged to our account. The amount was lodged to our account, and we're grateful for that. You know, so gratitude is a must, according to Coffee.
Yes, absolutely.
So our financial quest must be the creation of margins. And what is a margin? In simple terms, your take-home pay should be more than your expenses. And that excess is simply called savings. But we have to be mindful, and this is a part of awakening your financial literacy. You can't have it in an account. I am a numbers person, so I look to see what I earn in interest each month. And there's an account with a small amount of money in there. And I saw where this month I earned $3 or last month I earned $3 in interest. And when I did the maths, the interest rate was under 1%. So your money, you might be saving, and that's a great thing, but you have to seek guidance in terms of where you put the money. I want to share something with you. Remember, I tell you that this conversation is largely about experiences had. So I had a friend about 25 years ago. She hosted a program on CVM that looked on investments and pension. She's a pension specialist. And she asked me to get one of my recently, one of the students who had recently graduated from university. And so I approached a number of them, and you know, nobody was interested in coming on the program. You know what the comment was? Pension for old people. And I read some statistics some time ago which said that people begin to speak about their pension 5 years before retirement. Well, any time before retirement is good, but it would have been better if you were able to speak about it long before 5 years. So as I said before, we have to be strategic in the creation of wealth. Now, there's some things that we can do, you know. There's some things that we can do. Maybe I'm speaking to the wrong set of persons, but the young persons who I talk to, I tell them not to be too quick to leave home. What you say to that? Those of you with children who are probably contemplating leaving home, do you tell them that? Don't be too quick to leave home. And
I do.
Pardon?
I do. I tell my son that every day.
That he mustn't be too quick to leave home.
No. So
Right.
for me, I want 3 months, I started a savings account for him. And now I'm thinking about investing in Barita for him.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, you must encourage him to add something to it. So let's suppose he gets some money from his aunt in Canada. He can't just spend it, because what we have to do, we have to teach our children to be money managers. He can't spend all of it. You have to ask him for some of it and sensitize him to the fact that whatever you earn, whatever you get, you cannot spend all of it. Something must be put back. So make the investment for him, but if he gets a little money, you take some from him, and in so doing, you're really encouraging him to invest. But why did I say they shouldn't be too quick to leave home? Because when you are at home, you're not teaching them to be worthless. Let's suppose they just leave campus and they're working. Then it means that they can spend, they can pay some of the bills, and they must pay some of the bills. And if you're working too, you pay some. And so there's a win-win situation. Now, they are able to save more in that case, and they're probably able to buy a house, pay down on a house sooner rather than later if they accelerate their savings. And then when they buy that house, you know, they don't need to go and live in there. They can rent it and use that money to pay the mortgage, assuming it wasn't bought cash. It is deliberate actions like that that we say are strategic. And so one of the persons, I've met some persons who I admire. I know a couple. Well, they happen to be dead now, but when their son and daughter was getting married about maybe 25 years ago, they were able to give the son and daughter as a wedding gift an apartment. They each got an apartment on their wedding day. That was their parents' wedding gift to them. And I share this with the people who I speak to, because what it means is that each of them, that the couple would have been ahead of the game. They would have started out with one house. And so when most of us would be looking for the first house, they would be looking for their second house ahead of the game. But their parents facilitated that. But it wasn't just like that the parents facilitated it. They had to make sacrifices so that their children could be better off than they are. I want to pause because this is not me alone talking. I want to get feedback from you all. What you have to say. Am I talking foolishness? Let's hear.
Good evening. This is Philip. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, kind of two questions.
Go ahead.
Persons often advise that, if you're investing in property or assets such as a car, you should not buy cash readily. You should actually take out a loan.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not certain I agree with that approach. What are your thoughts?
Okay, my thoughts won't necessarily be what I practice, because I like to buy things cash. So, my first car was a car that I bought on loan, but subsequently I bought my vehicles cash because I just don't like that thing. I feel uncomfortable when I borrow. I feel very uncomfortable, but that's my personal quirk. And so I don't want to impose that on anybody. If what you're getting, if you can earn more on your money, if what you're earning on your money is more than what you're paying on the loan, it makes sense to borrow. You hearing that? You heard the response?
Yes, I totally agree because I'm in that situation now. I recently purchased a car.
Yes.
And they gave me about 6 years to pay.
Yes.
So my maths taught me and say if I pay X amount each month, this is what I earn. But it was not on the reducing balance.
Oh, well, that's probably, it was what you call the installment method.
Exactly. So when I pay the full amount that they tell me, half of it is deducted in interest.
Right. So the principal not going down. So you probably took the wrong type of loan. You ideally would have wanted a loan where the interest went down. Because what it could mean, is that you could, let's suppose you got a bonus. You could put some extra in a given month on it, and that would go towards principal and pay down the loan faster.
That's what I'm realizing. Would you recommend the same approach for buying a house?
Yes. Well, very few people can write a check for, let's take a starter house that's say $17-18 million. Very few people can find $18 million to just pump in a house. So the best thing, what I would say, probably try to bring a fair amount of the down payment to it. And you can make lump sums on it, lump sum payments. Let's suppose you come into some major cash. You could use it to not pay it off, but to make some lump sum payments on it, so that what you do, you bring down your principal at a faster rate.
That's what I'm realizing now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And this is my last question for the evening, which is something I'm grappling with. Yes, I'll just put it out there that I'm a bachelor and I live alone.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes I buy fast food.
Yes.
So when I calculate it, I think it's more expensive to actually get gas to go to the supermarket, purchase the meat, buy the seasoning, get the rice, time to cook, prepare the food, gas or electricity to prepare it, effort to wash up the plate and all of those things. So I just buy a food like for like $1,000 and serve it twice. But persons are advising against that. Say it's
No,
best
that's
to
definitely. The truth is you're not going to the supermarket every time you want a meal. You're going to buy, you're going to shop for the week or the month. So, and you could shop wholesale. It's definitely cheaper to buy and cook. Time consuming. And one of the things we could say is that you cook for the week and you parcel it out and that sort of thing. You end up saving. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, you end up saving more
I think about that.
when you cook.
And saving on your health bill as well.
And your health bill as well, yes. Because most of what you get, the fast food, not healthy.
I wanted to endorse what you were saying about the payment down on a mortgage. You know, to put the lump sum, when you get a little bonus, you put it on your lump sum. Because I paid down for my first place, my first home, in 8 years, my 30-year mortgage.
You paid it off.
Yes, in 8 years.
Yes. So I urge us to, what are some of the things we're going to do with our bonus if we get it? And you know, you're grateful if you get a bonus this year, because a lot of the companies are going to be reporting smaller profits at the end of the year. But just in case you get one, what are you going to do with it? You know, I would urge you to, maybe if you haven't settled down your school fees yet, and let me just take a little time out to speak to the school fees. And administration didn't send me here to do it. Olivine didn't send me here to do it. Make sure the decisions that we make must minimize the stress in our life. So we can't go off on some trip and we can't pay our school fees. So if you're getting a bonus, make sure that if you haven't sorted out your school fees, you're going to use the bonus to sort it out. And I would urge persons, maybe I'm speaking to a group of persons too late. I probably should have seen you before you came in here, but you can pass this on to others. Make sure you sort out your school fees before you come to the program. I hope I haven't offended anybody by that comment. Why am I saying that? Because I have seen so many persons who have not done their best in a program because they're worried about money.
Sir, sometimes you have to start in faith. Sometimes you have to move with
I hear you. Sometimes you have to start in faith.
Yeah, because my first degree I went through with faith. I didn't see it, but along the way it came.
Along the way.
If I had waited, I would probably not have done the first degree. So sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, but as you said, the right way is to see a way, but sometimes you have to take a leap of faith.
And I believe in faith. I believe in faith, but I've seen so many persons who do less than they would have done. They're not done. I've seen students running up and down around mid-semester time because they don't have, and the university is threatening to deregister them. And it is just stress. And I know those students could have done much better if they didn't have that stress on their head. Now, figures will vary depending on really what crisis we're in. So we're looking at the final point on this fourth slide. Some financial advisors tell you that you should strive to have 6 months' salary in your bank account to serve as a cushion against uncertainty. And I put it to you, is that enough? And that's a question that you have to answer. Because when it comes to personal savings, it is ultimately your own thing. I can't tell you what to do. I can give you some broad parameters, but when we get into the finer details, you have to answer those questions for yourself. Very much like when we put up the Excel file on budgeting, and you're asked to fill in, you're going to find that some persons are filling in some things and others don't find it relevant. But it is a broad enough template, and of course, feel free to add things in. But each person's story is different. Each person's story is different. So no one thing can fit everybody. But I think there are some broad issues that if we take them, we should minimize the stress in our lives.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is your response to persons who save in US dollars?
Well, the dollar is revaluing right now. It's strengthening. The Jamaican dollar is strengthening. And so persons who save in US dollars, when you do the conversion to Jamaican, you're getting less, you're holding less Jamaican right now. What I would say though, have a diversified, have a mixed portfolio. So don't only hold US dollars, hold US dollars, or you might want to diversify and have some Canadian. You might want to have Caymanian, the Cayman dollar. You might want to have money in equity, that's stocks. You might want to have money in bonds as well. So mix it. All of them not going to perform badly at the same time. So you end up with some things performing and some. That the persons were out of work. Pardon? Hello, I lost somebody.
I'm still here.
Okay, you're speaking?
No, I wasn't. No.
Okay, I heard a sound and then it left. Any other questions, please? I want to. Is this a meaningful conversation for you?
Absolutely.
Definitely for me.
Okay.
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay. Think about persons who were sent home without pay or a fraction of their pay. That was a reality. The utility bills still came. The mortgage was still due for payment. What message is driven home to us? The message that is driven home for me is in good times, we must, like the story of Joseph, set aside for times of scarcity. It is excess which we create and call savings that will take us through the lean period. I want to ask some questions. You answer them quietly. When we saw the bonus credited to our account in 2019, how did we use it? On December 31st, 2019, we never knew that in 69 days, a pandemic of epic proportions would rock the foundation of our existence. Now, COVID calls for preparation at different level, but we are in a budget conversation. So I just want us to focus on the financial aspects of it. Maybe one of the questions we could ask is, how can we do it better? If in our lifetime, another pandemic comes, if in our lifetime another pandemic comes, would we be better off based on the wisdom gained in this period? So I want to ask some questions. The pandemic, or make some statements. The pandemic did not sound a shrill alarm stating that it was coming. It arrived, and we've had to deal with all the things that proceed from it. We must remember that people who build wealth do it incrementally. And listen to this, and the thread of sacrifice features dominantly in that journey. Foregoing the shoe or the party to save funds for an IPO or an APO is extremely important. Barito was opened on the 26th of August. Have we bought into it? Did we get the advice, and what did the advice say to us? But I want to go back to last year. How many of us took part in any of the seemingly numerous IPOs and APOs that were a part of the financial landscape last year? I'm reminded of the advice given to me many years ago that to gain financial independence, I have to live below my means. And so I lovingly pass this advice on to you. Okay. Questions. What has emerged out of your moment of reflection? Is there anything that you'd want to do better? Is there anything that you'd want to do better in 2021 or for the remainder of 2020?
I was actually just reflecting on the fact that to take part in the IPOs, etc., you actually have to have some savings. You don't just call up the people and tell them you want to participate.
Yes. So that savings that we spoke about earlier on, remember, it's in your NCB savings account, you know, earning 0.5%. And you want to now do what with it? You want to convert it into a higher yielding return. Now, a good advisor will look on your thing and say, and make that suggestion for you. Make that suggestion to you. Maybe you could put it in X or Y. It's a better yielding. But I want you to develop that sort of sensitivity about where you can put your funds.
And sir,
yes,
a word of advice. Sometimes when you go to these persons for financial advice,
yes,
they guide you based on their own targets that they have to meet.
agreed.
So it is important that you read before and try to have a basic understanding, because they are looking out for their interest to get their commission, and they are going to lead you to areas that may not reap enough benefits. So don't just rely on them, do your own research.
Agreed. And of course, some of us are not financial type of persons. But you know, I saw a course at the stock exchange that actually it's being run today and tomorrow, but I'm sure they will run it again. And it's called Finance for Non-Financial Managers. The stock exchange is running that course. And what persons who are not financial, so like if you're HR, you tend not to be a financial person. And a lot of HR persons, they say they're afraid of the numbers. But you cannot be afraid of the numbers, because if you strive for the top job, you have to have you have to be comfortable with the numbers. It would be good to sensitize and gain some knowledge by enrolling into a course like that. Okay, what I want us to do now is to look at our budget, the Excel budget template that I gave you. And we're going to have a discussion where that is concerned. Are you seeing it?
Yes, sir.
You're seeing it? Okay.
I'm not seeing it.
You're not seeing it, Alderine?
No.
I'm not seeing it either.
It flashed up and then disappeared.
Beginning. Let's take it at the beginning, which is where we have receipts. What are some of the possible things we could have? We could have the take-home salary, that check that they lodged to our account. Maybe we own a property. We were talking about that earlier on. And if we rent it, rental income would come in. Maybe we've invested in stocks. And in any month that we receive dividends, we would get that money in. Maybe we have part-time employment, and maybe we have some other income. Okay? Let's suppose that we have a salary and dividend income of 30,000. You see that on the screen?
Yes.
That would mean that we have total receipts of 530,000. 500,000 coming from our salary and 30,000 from dividend income. So what are you going to say to yourself? Maybe we could arrange that this 500,000 takes account of some savings already, because maybe we have some our pension would be taken out before we get the 500,000. And maybe our insurance with the investment component would be taken out before we get the 500,000. So some amount of savings would have been had. But if we're aggressive about savings, we could say, yes, savings has come out already, but can I also now look to invest more? So if I want to invest more, what it means is that my total payments can be equal to $530,000. Am I making sense, team?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry, could you just say that again, please? I was distracted.
If I might have had some savings coming out already out of my 500,000. And a laid back approach would be to say, well, I have savings already. It's taken out before I arrive at 500.
I don't like that.
Okay, what you don't like?
No, I don't like that.
Hello? Was that
Asking everybody to make sure that they've muted their mic. We're just asking that the speaker be the only person speaking at a time, all right? Please.
Okay, and then you unmute it if you have a question to ask, because I really want students to ask questions, because that brings some light on the matter. I don't know whether I'm speaking and whether you're understanding or not. Can I have your word that you will ask questions if you're not following?
Okay.
Yes.
I do have a question as well.
You have a question. Can I take it now, please?
Sure. All right. So you had mentioned that the 500,000 you may have saved from that. To better understand, I am thinking about an example, which would be your salary is $500,000. That is what you take home.
Mm-hmm.
But say, for example, you pay a pension of 15%.
Right.
So that is an example, right?
It's an example. So that would have been taken
taken out, and you
take out before you get the salary of 500,000.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Right. Some savings has happened already.
Right.
If you're aggressive, that you ought to say to yourself, that can't be your only savings.
Understood. I understand. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Great. Now, also.
But sir, that savings would only be accessible when you leave the job or when you retire.
Or when you retire, right? And you need to have. That's
not really be the rainy day money.
That's not your rainy day money. And there needs to be some money, given that most of us tend to be indisciplined when it comes to money. You want to have that sum of money that you can't touch. And by the way, pensions are portable now, so you're not getting, the law is moving to that point where when you leave the organization, you don't get it back in your hand. It goes over to the other place that you're working. So that's where they want to go to, because so often you get back what you have when you leave the job and you blow it. So if it can stay with the organization and you get it when you get to 60 or 65, whatever is the pensionable age, then that would be good. So you have to say to yourself that I need to create some more. I need to create some more. And of course, the things that you acquire, you need to ask yourself, what sort of assets you have? What sort of assets you have? And I want you to put your assets in two categories, earning assets and non-earning assets. And I like to ask this question. Suppose you had $40 million. Would you buy a nice $40 million home in Norbrook, or would you buy 4 $10 million homes? What would you do?
For $10 million
home.
$10 million home. Makes more sense from an earning stream. Because you see that $40 million home that you live in Norbrook in, that home not earning anything for you. You have a mortgage on it and it's not helping to earn it. It won't be an earning asset at all. So we have to look at how we earn. Another thing, suppose you have $18 million. Would you buy a Jaguar XF with it? Or a Jaguar F-Pace? that would be a car that you'd be driving and looking quite nice in, but is it earning for you?
No.
Would you use some of it to generate a business?
Buy a nice car and treat taxi.
That's where, because the taxes create a stream of income for you, which you'd more than likely put in other income, which we're seeing right here, the money that you get from it. Okay, so we earn we have total receipts of 530,000 coming from our salary and coming from dividend income. Now, these are some of the expenditures that we face. Supermarket, all of us face that one. School fees, personal. Those of you enrolled in this program, you have school fees that are personal. If you have children, you're going to have their school fees. And people are going to have either mortgage payment or rent payment. Maybe you have car payments. Now, I thought as I put this one in credit card payments, I want to say something. Make sure that you or try to, whatever you spend in a particular month on your credit card, make sure that you can pay it off at the end of the month. Are you hearing me?
Definitely, definitely.
That's how I do it.
I hear about 4 or so students talking, responding to me, and I think there are about 33 students in the class. I haven't tuned out the others.
No, sir, I just don't have any credit card. So I won't have that bill.
You won't have that bill. Great. So what it means is that when you're filling in your budget, and guess what? One of the things that the greatest compliment that you can pay me is to use this template on a monthly basis for your personal things. Okay. So you have your mortgage payment, you have your car payment, you have your credit card payment. You might have other loans if you do fill in what you're going to pay for that on a monthly basis. Entertainment, maybe right now, COVID has taken that out of the equation. Household expenses. I just want us to pause to just look at that one. Notice I have an asterisk beside it. So household expenses. What are some of the things that would make up our household expense? Are you seeing them? You seeing the scroll down? We purchased a gas
Maintenance.
drapery. You might have drapes you're going to purchase or you're going to clean them. You clean your upholstery.
You need miscellaneous.
Yes, we can put that in. We paint, replacement of fixtures. We have gardening services. We might have a household helper. We're going to have insurance on our home contents. If the place burned down or water wet it up, we can replace it. And our home repairs. And of course, it's always good to have a miscellaneous in there for any unforeseen. Your miscellaneous can't be too large. Okay. Okay, let's go back to the other slide. The next thing we look at is motor vehicle expenses. If we don't have a motor vehicle, then we don't have this issue. And what are some of the things that would make up the motor vehicle expense? We go to our motor vehicle expense and we see what would make it up. Car repairs / maintenance. We service the car on a quarterly basis. We buy petrol for it, the insurance on it. We register it, we have fitness, and we have a miscellaneous, any unforeseen. And then we plug in our total. I just want to say that I'm pretty sure that we are comfortable with Excel. You'll have a total here, and whatever total we put in right here, we will see it appearing in our sheet 1. So if we have 8 right here, Notice that we have 8 in our total. See that?
Sir.
And we have 8 right there. See, we have 8 right here. Okay. I'm not going to spend too long on the number crunching. We want to get into the analysis of it, the discussion of it.
Sir, before you go on, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
I heard someone say that they did not have a credit card, right?
Yes,
But I would say to person, get a credit card that gives you benefits, right? And what you basically can do is to pay your bills with the credit card, do everything with it, but pay it at the end of the month.
Right.
Right now, I have a Lovebird key card, and I normally travel once per year, and I don't buy my tickets. Because the Lovebird key card, the points accumulate, and I'm able to get my tickets to travel. So get a credit card that gives you something. Right? So don't write off credit cards.
What I would say to person, and it's convenient. Long ago, I used to have to be in the bank on a Friday evening to get what you call weekend money. I don't do that anymore. Well, you can get cash at the ATM on a Saturday or a Sunday or after work on a Friday evening, but you don't need to walk around with cash because you can use your credit card. But what you must not do is spend to the extent that you end up not being able to pay it off at the end of the month. You get
Sir, for the person who have bad spending habits, a credit card will only put that person in a whole lot of debt.
Yes,
whether it's giving you a whole lot of benefits, yes or no, it's not worth it.
Sophia, you need a session.
So what you would need, that such a person would need...
Marsha, leave me alone.
Such a person would need financial counseling. But maybe until they develop the maturity, you probably would not encourage them to get one. But they would need a counseling because it is a good thing if you can manage the spending.
I agree with you, sir. A credit card has its advantages, especially if you know how to monitor your spending. And as regards to the previous person who spoke, I did not get your name. I myself have a Bank of America credit card. And the last time I traveled, I was so surprised that it is a rewards credit card. So for every everything that I purchase or any online shopping in-store shopping, I do get benefits. And the last time I went away, I was able to cash out $180, and I have my credit card less than a year now. So it has its advantages once it is that you're able to monitor and manage your spending.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so we agree that it makes sense to have it, but we also agree that we would not have one if we don't have the financial discipline. But because it is good, persons who don't have that financial discipline need to get financial counseling so that they can grow up one day, mature, and have it. Agreed?
Agree.
Yes. Where do they get the counseling?
There are persons who provide financial counseling for people. I've seen people online talking about financial counseling. Your banker can provide financial counseling for you. Your banker can provide financial counseling. They can sit down and help you to prepare a budget.
Yes, but remember, the bank doesn't like it when you pay your card off every month because they don't get interest. Or not as much as they get when you're running in a deficit.
But if you can't pay it in real terms, they're not getting anything. They're going to have to write it off as bad. And I thought, so, I must confess that I practice what I preach. So I've never paid interest, and I've had a credit card for over 20 odd years.
Right here with you, sir. Same
Not
here.
paid interest. And guess what? I heard that, Olivine, and I said the first year of having the card, I said they're going to reduce the balance. And I was surprised. Each year when the card is renewed, they increase the balance.
Yes.
So they clearly see me as a good credit risk.
Yes, that has been my experience as well, thank God.
You're right, you know, so it is true they're not earning any interest from it, but at the same time, they appreciate it. Okay, we're moving into another area, personal care. Are we seeing that? I'm just going to cover that so you can see it. Personal care. Now, what makes a personal care? Let's just, I think it's at the bottom. Let's scroll down to personal care. Barber. Everybody growing beard now. Hairdresser. People going natural now. They're afraid of the hairdresser. But I know people who get facial, manicure, pedicure, and the purchase of clothing. And there are other things that persons could add in there that would constitute personal care for them. But I want
medical expenses, where would that go? That's personal care?
No, that you might want to call that just medical expenses.
Okay.
I'd want to call that medical expenses. So moving to slide, the sheet one, we could slot that in there. We could slot medical expenses in there. Okay, so if there's something that doesn't apply to you, you could slot it in there. In doing my poll yesterday when I was preparing this, somebody suggested gym fees. And maybe that's a good one to have in there. I just want to tell all these gym buffs that you heard the news, I think, on Monday night that Spartan will be closing pretty soon. We heard that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir.
Spartan of almost 50 years, 1976. So that's what, 44 years? They're closing the gates pretty soon. But I'm sure there are other gyms that will be open, not as large as that. So we have that there. Okay. There are two types of payments that I want us to talk about. Because when you're looking to cut payments, what happens when you cut your payments, all things being equal and constant? What happens when you cut your payments? Tell me what happens to this line, savings, this savings.
The savings would increase.
Savings would increase, or your this savings. This savings is when you spend more than yes. When you spend, when you spend less, when you pay less, your savings grow. Or if you are not savings, that would go down. This savings would go down. This savings happens when you pay out more than you're receiving. Okay, so there are two types of payments. We have programmed payments or programmed expenditure, and we have discretionary expenditure. The programmed expenditure, the things that you must pay. So I would think that one of the things that you must pay is your school fees. You must make payment, your
mortgage,
loan-related payments, mortgage, you're going to pay that, you're not going to run the risk with it. You want to finish the program, so you have to pay your school fees. Those are programmed. And maybe you're on a payment plan, so you have to pay that. Programmed expenditure. It's hardly likely that you want to abandon those. Those are what I call the must pays. Now, what is a thing that you need not spend on? This is redundant because it doesn't exist. You don't have to go to ATI, right, Olive?
Well, no, the thing is the entertainment thing. I was actually thinking that things like cable expenditure, that's entertainment. You're paying money for your cable package and that sort of thing. So you don't have to go out to be entertained.
Is it possible now to just watch TVJ and see?
No, cable, premium cable. I was telling them last week it's costing me nearly 23,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. So you might want to get into a cheaper program.
Exactly, yes.
Yes, you might want to get into a cheaper program. So this is one of the things that you can play with in terms of bringing it down. Let us look at household expenses. Let's look on the broad areas that make it up. Well, household expenditures are a broad area. Let us look on this one. Anything that we could do without? You could decide to send home your helper. Or rather than your helper coming in 5 days for the week, you can decide to have a day's worker who comes in 3 days a week.
Yes, I can work with that one.
So you can move that down. You have to cut your garden, but rather than, I know some people whose gardener come every week, you might decide that he comes every other week.
How about the painting? You don't paint so regularly.
You don't paint so regularly, but we put it in because it would be a household expense. But you wouldn't be painting regularly. People paint every 3 years, depending on how quickly a walls get soiled. And of course, you can bring the personal discipline, the family, don't touch the walls and dirty them up. But even with that, there comes a time when you have to paint. But painting is minimized if you have good wall care. Upholstery cleaning, that also can be minimized, not eliminated, but minimized, depending on whether you eat on your sofa and cause food to spill on it. And, it's a discipline that you bring to things. In the case of your insurance on the home contents, you can shop around for insurance. You clearly would want to insure your home. Insure your home contents, but you're going to shop around for the best in that area. Gas cylinder purchase, things that you can use. You can ensure that the gas is not leaking. You can ensure that you cook wisely. That's rather than cooking every day, you cook in bulk. You use less gas that way. So there are ways to look at your household expense and try to manage it. Any questions? Because I always get nervous when I hear myself talking. I'm the only one talking. Any questions, anything to add to it?
Well, the adding to it was to the replacement of the fixtures in your home. You can be wise about that. Because actually, sometimes buying something of great quality, it might cost more, but that in the long term, you got your money back. Instead of buying something cheap now, and then you have to replace it next year and a year after that. So think about it. Sometimes you spend more, but you benefit in the long term.
I agree with that. A lady, once I heard her saying that she buys expensive clothes, and she says that sometimes it lasts her 12 years, just talking about business suits. And that is a way to, rather than buying and replacing on a regular basis, you buy expensive and it lasts you for a longer time. But the point I want to make in our payment is, what are the things that we can cut? And maybe you need to now look at, if you're really aggressive about savings, because I want to talk about savings, what we can do with savings, because this savings is initially in your current account, Let me just get into the maths of it. Notice that we introduced $8, and what happened? The $8 caused our savings to move from $530,000 down to $529,992. The principle of maths is that as your payments increase, your savings will go down. So you have to be very clear on how you're going to manage your payments. Moving along, daycare expenses would be for parents with children. Miscellaneous expenses.
Not necessarily, because you could have an aged relative who needs support.
Okay, yeah, well, that would be another name. You mean like you have them in an elderly, a home for elderly?
Or you pay a sitter to come for them, to stay with them.
Okay, yes, okay, that's right, yes. Miscellaneous expenses, that would be anything that is small and unforeseen. Now, life and health insurance. Some persons would have it taken out up top. So this, putting it in the bottom is not for those persons who have a work-related plan. Because in arriving at this 500,000, the employer would have paid their portion, which would be deducted out of your pay, and they would then take your portion out of your pay. So this life and health insurance, I didn't want to leave it out because it's something, we're not in a health class, but this is something that is very important. It is important that if you don't have one that is based on your company, that you have one for yourself. This is very important. This is very, very important. Utilities, we have to pay that one, but we can minimize it by developing the discipline at home, turning out lights,
Doing maintenance, because a dripping pipe costs money over time.
Yes, yes, that's true. People going into solar right now. I know somebody who went into solar and they said that it took something like $25,000 off their monthly bill. Of course, they said that the outlay was important. I mean, it was very high, but it caused savings to come over a period of time.
You pay for your solar in about 7 years.
Something, yes.
Yes. When you think of what, if you borrowed money from the bank versus paying for yourself, and also the Development Bank of Jamaica has given all commercial banks in Jamaica money to have all of us go solar. So the banks in Jamaica have money waiting for you to come in to borrow it to make your home solar.
Yes, and they're complaining, the banks are complaining that the DBJ funds not being taken up by people.
Because I think people don't know about it. But the thing too is that they ask you for so much. They want so much from you that you end up just paying for it yourself and forgetting them. They want to know every single thing about you. So, no. But it is there in case you want to do it. And the thing about solar is that you can do it incrementally. So you can pay for this amount of solar and then add to your system.
Yes. It makes sense in the long run, though. Makes sense in the long run to take that on.
Yes, my bill fell from about $16,000 to $250 a month, or something like that.
That would have been about a $15,750 reduction.
Yes.
In your bill. And that's good. That's good. Okay, so we have that life insurance. Gym, I encourage us to use the gym and pay for it.
But then you can also go and walk in the park or, just jog with friends on the street or something. So you might not have to pay gym fees.
Okay, being fit. And tithing is important. So we have our total payment. So how many of us will try to put how many of us used to put a budget together before we came to this class? Hello?
I did. I normally do.
I did too. But didn't stick to it. You see, that is the problem.
Yes. Remember that quote that we had in about slide 2?
Mm-hmm.
Making a budget is easy, but sticking to it is difficult. We have to stick to it. Because, yes, go ahead.
Ideally for me, what I normally do is I have a template that I use repeatedly every month.
Yes.
and the figures will go in. So like utilities, you normally get them like a week or so before it's due. So I know those are definitely on it. And I just stick to that because it gives me control over what is to come, you know. So I kind of, the things like unforeseen that you can't see, yes, I have a
Yes.
little wiggle room to deal with that. But I find out that if I make the budget and I stick to it, then I don't find myself just picking up things haphazardly without
Yeah.
a plan. And it helps you throughout the month. So I will take up things so as far as lunch money, if it's lunch money,
Of
my
course.
gas, my toll, um, lunch money for my child, everything. So I have them sectioned out and I know
Yeah.
exactly what it is that I should have as savings by the end of the month.
And you have to factor in something for savings. That's very important.
Yes. So and then what even because some things you might overestimate and you might have a little change left back. So I don't trouble that moving it from a current account to put in another saving account until that month finishes.
That's right. So whatever you have left, and of course, as the savings grow in any given year, you can then take it out and put it on something that would give you a better yield. Please, I hope nobody has $3 million in their savings account, right?
Latanya wanted to say something as well.
It ought to be somewhere else earning a better return. And when it reaches down payment level, then what do we do with it? We can probably convert it into real estate. Use that money for a pay down for some real estate. And hopefully real estate, which will do, guess what? It takes us up back to the first point in our budget. Providing what? Rental income. If I fill this in, let's suppose I'm filling in something like $85,000 a month. Look what it does to my total receipts. And let's scroll down further. Let's look to see what it does to the savings. I now have savings of $614,992. Before that, I had $529,992. Now I have more savings because I have developed more streams of income. Somebody said something at the beginning of the class. We wanted, that gentleman said, is he still there? Who said about diversifying streams of income?
Yes, Damien. His icon is still here.
You remember?
No, I'm here.
Okay, you're here. Okay, I see two persons under raising their hands. They have a question to ask.
For me, the question is, I want an understanding. I understand when you say, to put your savings to a point where it can become a deposit for, say, real estate.
Yes, yes.
If it's a deposit, then I'm assuming that you'd have another payment to make or an increased payment, an additional mortgage or a mortgage to pay.
Yes, that's right.
The part that I have in regards, I like the concept of that. But say, for example, you have, based on how mortgage rates are now, and
going down, trending down.
Yes, it's trending down. However, if you're not going to NHT and going to some of the building societies, their interest rate tend to be higher.
Oh, other than what you just called a while ago.
Yes, right. And I'm saying, using based on the house, say for example, you buy a $10 million house and you pay the deposits and you have your monthly mortgage, and then you look at what you can possibly rent it for. Because that now because you have to go pay your mortgage. So say you rent it for, say, $60,000, and the possibility that you have a mortgage payment of say $50. I was putting a ballpark figure out there.
So your rent is 60 and your mortgage is 60?
Like 40 something or 50.
So what it means is that you're generating some change from it.
Exactly. And you have to look at maintenance. I get the long-term investment because the house will appreciate.
That's right.
Right? I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that over the long term. It makes sense. But you find yourself now, if you want to pay down a mortgage, like we were discussing earlier,
Yes, yes.
then my end number is getting smaller.
Yes. So what you might depend on salary increases back money. Or, you know what the back money is. They're paying you. They were late in paying you. You didn't get your increase.
Retroactive payments.
Your retroactive payments, what they call back money. Retroactive payments that can be used to put as a lump sum to pay it down, or if you get a bonus, or you get a promotion, so you're earning more money. Those sources can be used to pay down on it. But of course, it is a strain. People tell you that when you have a mortgage, there's a strain. But guess what? Each time you make a payment, your equity in it increases. And one day, freedom will come, and you'll have a house that is unencumbered. And you know what?
Hallelujah to that.
You know what people do? That is a pension fund for them, you know. There are people with 3, 4 houses. And guess what? When they get old and they can't deal with that, you know what they do? They sell those homes and they have a lump sum there that goes towards their pension. Are you with me? They invest those funds and that is used to supplement their pension. Because more than likely, the pension that you get when you're working, I mean, after you finish working, the pension you get from the organization might not be enough. And this home, you can sell it and then invest it, and whatever streams of income come from it, you use it to supplement the income. Or you might have an attractive pension. You could sell it, or you could then give it as a gift to your child. Remember I told you about that couple, when the children, the son and daughter getting married, each of them got a home. Either the money or the home can be transferred to them. You set them ahead of yourself. So one of the things that I read is that we should strive to put our children ahead of where we were. So a lot of people will tell you that they had to work before they went to UE. And they worked before they went to UE. But their children didn't have to do it because they made the right sacrifices and they did the right things. People will tell you that they had to rent a home. But guess what? Their children get homes for gifts. No, it's not everybody who can do this. But maybe if we make the right decisions, these things can happen. I know you can't do it now. But what we want to do, let us look at receipts. Let's look on some of the things that make it up. Rental income, dividend income, part-time employment, and whatever other income you have. Wouldn't we want to, in time, ensure that each of these areas, and it's 5 of them, we're able to put something in for them? That is what we call diversifying the streams of income. And when we diversify the streams of income, we're less stressed. Because if we can populate each of these, rental income, dividend income, part-time employment, and other income, if we can populate them, then it means that we become less reliant on our salary. Now, what I want to say to you, don't feel badly. You can't do it now, but we need to start the discussion from now. We need to start the discussion from now. It's like going to the gym. And some people feel badly because they see people squatting 200 pounds and they can barely lift 40 pounds. It's okay. Stick to it. One day you too will be squatting 200 pounds or more than that. Stick to the journey. This conversation is not to condemn anybody at all or to make you feel badly, but to point your mind in a particular direction. Very much like the people at the gym who can barely lift 30 pounds now. You can in time, with the right decisions and the right attitude. My story is that it's not about flossing. It's not about wearing your wealth on your back or on your feet. or showing your wealth in the carport. It is have that quiet confidence that you could be unemployed for the next 10 years. Did you hear me, class?
Definitely.
Yes.
But it won't happen overnight. It will happen in time. You could afford to be unemployed for 10 or 20 years.
And the truth is, one day you will be when you retire.
Right? When you retire, you're going to be unemployed for the rest of your life. So how the challenge really is to fill these lines in there on the receipts. Don't just make it one. Make it all 5. And maybe you might want to ask yourself right now, how many, and this is a personal question, but it's good to answer truthfully and quietly. How many of these 5 lines are filled for you? And what sort of plan? It might be only one, but what sort of plan do you have in place to fill the others? These are my few words to you. Can I take some questions?
Any questions, anybody?
Okay. Good night. I have a question.
Yes. Okay. This is Lacey.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So in regards to the savings account, is it recommended to have, like, I think you had mentioned something about like having about $3 million.
No, you
is it
don't
recommended
savings
to
account.
have it in your savings account instead of like an equity account?
No, you don't want to because you're not getting much on it, you know. You're getting under 1% on your savings account.
Okay.
So you're not maximizing the return. To me, it's not just to have money, it is what sort of returns you're getting on it. So you're not getting much on your $3 million if you keep it in a savings account. So you need to ask yourself, you want to keep some of it in a safe form, because this is what happens now. If you buy equity with that 3 million and that's all you have, what it means is that if you're laid off, you might be laid off at a point in time when the equity prices are low. And if you're laid off and you need it, then it means you're going to have to sell the equity and you're going to be getting much less than 3 million for it. So you need to have some money. Maybe you can put it on fixed interest, fixed income. You might want to buy government bonds with it. You get it's still low, but you get a relatively higher interest rate on it. You hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Or you wouldn't want to put it in equity because the nature of equity is that it goes up and it goes down. And so when you need it, you might just not, it might just be very low. It's like your school fees. If you plan to go to school, talking to the wrong person, so I'm speaking hypothetically. If you know that next year you want to go to school, you can't put that money, your school money, in equity. You can't, because at the point when you need it, it might have lost some value.
I don't know if you remember last time we spoke, we were talking about the amount of risk that you can tolerate. You have to know how much risk you can tolerate and then speak to people who are knowledgeable about money markets, etc., for them to guide you in how you should invest your money.
Yes. What you're facing at a given point in time will determine where you put your funds. As I said, this is a good example of if you plan to go to school next year, you can't take that money and put it in the equity market because you might lose it. Persons who invested in equity last year will tell you that they've lost 20% of the value of equity, of what they had. What they had last year, they have only 80% of that value right now. And we don't know where that market is going to end. So think about somebody who needed that money for this year. They'd have lost 20% of the value.
And the other thing that we said also is that when you're investing, don't just walk away. You have to keep your eye on the ball so that you can know when to move your investments and where to move your investments. So you don't just walk away and have somebody else do the work for you. You should at least be interested to know what he or she is doing.
Yes. In fact, you should have that conversation. And this is where knowledge is important. And I mentioned financial management for non-financial managers. And we're going to have more of a discussion on that when we get into our classes. So we'll have more of that. Have we seen a little more light than we came in the class with from this exercise?
Yes, I have. It's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
I had a budget, but it wasn't so detailed. And I believe when it's more detailed, it's better for you to have a clearer understanding of your expenses.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
It does. Thank you.
And you know, I actually wanted to say something earlier. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Miss Reeves. When she was talking, she mentioned her toll payments. And it occurred to me that a toll, that didn't even enter my mind at all. And what I was thinking is that when you sit and put your budget down, you really have to sit and think about what your expenses are. Maybe what you should do is write down everything you spend on for about a week to make sure that you don't miss anything. Because a toll expense would have been something that I would have missed.
Yes, that's true. Especially, and probably because, Olivine, you don't use it
often. But the fact is that, you know, you could end up in a month doing it 4 times. And that's really not something you knew about before, you know, but
once you, I will share with you that my credit card payments, each time I use my credit card, I put it on a spreadsheet. So even before I get my bill, I know what it's going to be. And of course, what it also does, it says to you, it forces, if you look on it, it forces you to say, I have to ensure that I curb my spend because I'm pretty close to the mark that I've budgeted for credit card payment. I'm pretty close to that mark. So I have to spend. You know, if it was all in your head, you wouldn't have an exact figure. But when you record all your credit card payments, you can go in and look on it and see a spreadsheet. This is the 10th of September and I've spent X $1,000.
I see Shauna K's hand up.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. From experience, what I've realized, sometimes you go on the road, you have a budget, but you make small purchases. I don't know if this have happened to somebody before, where you're swiping all day and you come back and you check your balances and you're going, okay, hold on, what happened? I have to check back the receipt to see if I really did go on the road and spend all of this. So what I found that works for me is that I tend to keep my receipts. And at the end of like coming in, if I don't do it the same day, but I eventually get to it, is where I itemize stuff that I do. And I realize that I'm spending more than I don't necessarily have to spend, and I'm seeing where I can actually save. Because sometimes you're on the road and blindly you buy a bottle of juice here, you buy lunch here, you bought this here, and you quickly, in the blink of an eye, $5,000-$10,000 just go.
Yes, that's true.
It's nothing substantial. It's nothing out of the way. It's just probably going to a pharmacy, you see a soap that says, I want to try this out. And you pick it up and everything just adds up. You know, those are small miscellaneous. Although it says miscellaneous in the broad heading, there are so many, it can take up so much of your budget.
Okay, you know what I suggest that you do? Okay, so you have splurged, so you're going to have to now pull back on something else. So that at the end of the day, it balances itself out.
But there's this guy, Jack Canfield, one of these gurus. He says that he actually does have a little money. He says he has a set amount of money that he gambles every month. It's a small amount. But the fact is that if your budget doesn't if your budget is too draconian, you're not going to keep it. So he actually has, I think he says it's like $100 a month. He's a multimillionaire, but he has like $100 a month and he doesn't spend more than that. But the truth is, he gave himself permission to enjoy $100 a month.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's
you know.
fine. But a draconian budget, one of the things that they say about budget is that it must be realistic. So it makes no sense me saying that I must spend $5,000 on gas for the month. The truth is that's what I spend for a week. So to write down in a budget $5,000, it means that it's not reasonable. So your budget must be reasonable. Somebody does that for donations. They have a budget for donations. They say they're blessed and they're going to give back. And they say, when it is finished, it's finished. Anybody come to them after that, they say, next month. Mr. Moore, I see your hand up. Stan Moore? Hello?
Yes, I'm right here. You hear me?
I'm not hearing you so well, Mr. Moore. A little better. Shout if you have to.
Yeah, you're talking about the credit card spending.
Yes.
And somebody had pointed out to me years ago, there are 2 dates. If you balance between those dates, it will help you to manage it better. The date when you pay, and there's another date where, I forget they call it, some crossover thing. Like if your pay date is it 3rd of the month. If you go by between the 3rd and the 10th, you pick up almost right away. I forget what they call it. I didn't want.
Okay, I'm struggling to hear you, Stan.
All right, forget it. Forget it, man. Don't know why.
Sorry, I haven't heard you.
Yeah, you're hearing me now?
A little better, yes.
Yeah, I was saying there are 2 dates. The date when it is due.
Yes.
And there's another date, maybe about 10 days in between or 7 days in between.
When you have to pay the bill.
Yeah.
Bill date and due date.
Yeah, but there's a way to balance it so that the interest don't catch up.
Okay, so what you do, you probably do most of your, before a given month, you do most of your spending after they have billed you.
Yes, something like that.
Uh-huh.
I don't, you know.
Yes, uh-huh. That's one way to manage it. But you know what I say? I've thought about that and I say, if I don't get the beating today, I'm getting it tomorrow. So I'm going to get beaten anyway. So let me not get the beating. So what we do, we don't spend more than we have to spend. That's a broad principle.
Yeah, that's a broad thing. Yeah, but
that's a broad principle.
People are talking about.
Yes, I know that way, but guess what? The truth is that you escape it this month and then next month you have to deal with it.
But it depends on what time if within that window, you go and buy anything, then you're going to get sick. You have to buy it at the end of that window when you get out.
Outside of that. And then you get a month's reprieve, really.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yes, you get a month's reprieve. Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Okay.
I'm okay. Good presentation so far, Mike.
Thank you. I'm wrapping up now. I have to try and avoid
curfew.
The curfew, yeah. I'm not at home. I'm in my office.
Okay.
So I want to just apologize for that, class.
And I would like to thank you for doing this for us. This is the last in our orientation presentations for this academic year. And we thank Mr. Michael Roofe and his students for giving up the first of their classes for this semester to educate all of us in how to create a personal budget. And of course, it's even more than that, how to stick to it as well. So join me in giving the usual HRD applause, HRD thanks for the generosity that Mr. Roofe and his students have shown us. Because of course the students didn't complain that they weren't having a class today. They came and they're here listening with us. So thanks a lot.
So I'll see now to my students, I'll see you next week, and we'll be having a fireside chat about the road to success. Academic road to success. So see you then. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay then. So,
Okay, thank you.
okay.